I want to share with you a story of somebody who fought and didn't give in. Now, that person's me, and I feel it's my responsibility as someone who's in recovery to share my experiences, because, you know, as a man, it's really difficult to flipping speak out, and I can't lose sight of that. However far I may be down the road into my personal journey, into my recovery, there's a lot of men and boys out there who are on the cusp of speaking out and thinking, lads like me don't talk about stuff like this from areas where we're from, and maybe struggle to see the strength in that vulnerability and getting vulnerable. So that's why I'm talking about this stuff today. You know, one of the most difficult things as a man for me to talk about, one part of my abuse, was when I was sexually abused and raped and exploited from 15 up until 21, because, you know, for me there came some extra stuff around that, and that was, I thought I was a man. At the time I thought I was a grown man. I was a little scrawny kid when I look back, but that wasn't my mindset later on. You know, I used to beat myself up about it and think, why don't I just do something? Why didn't I fight him off? You know, why didn't I do him in? You know, all that stuff was going around my head, and that turned into shame, and that made me proper ill, to be honest with you. You know, it wasn't till later on down the line where I learned this stuff, because, you know, I didn't learn this stuff in school about speaking out and about grooming and about sex and all that stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff. You know, so it took me many years to kind of sort of grow up and mature, really, and get some self-awareness and get my head around all this shit and get my head around what had happened. You know, so how did I cope with it? Like, through the years, I put on a brave face. I pretended to myself that it didn't happen. I took drugs to mask my feelings, you know, to keep that flipping cupboard door shut, because I thought, if I speak out about this, what are people going to think? They're going to think I'm weak, they're going to think I'm pathetic, they're going to think I'm lying, they think I'm saying it for attention, they're just going to think I'm a piece of shit, really. Now, why have you let that happen to you? And I thought people would take the piss, do you know what I mean, and laugh at me. That wasn't the case, and that wasn't my experience. If I tell you a little bit about what happened, because the thing is, this stuff can happen to anyone, and you know, it could happen to your son, it could happen to your daughter. You know, how many people are out there walking about, throwing themselves into work, going to the gym, walking about with a staffy dog, taking steroids, putting this big man mask on, to cover up what's happened and make themselves totally unapproachable, so it won't happen to them again. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of people like that. There's loads of people who I know like that. And for some people, that's their way of coping, and that's their mask, what they put on. But I'm here to tell you that that stuff didn't work for me. It worked for a certain amount of time, but it ultimately, keeping that stuff inside, led to me having a breakdown, led to me in mental health units, led to me in rehab, led to me being in prison, led to me losing my family, losing my friends, being isolated, you know, confirming to myself that I was a piece of shit, basically, and wasn't worthy to speak out. Not that I had the words at that time to speak out. So what happened to me is, you know, someone befriended me at school, an older guy, some guy who I was friends with his missus. His missus was in my year at school when we was both 15, and he was like 10 years older. Now, at that time, he used to come and pick her up from school in his mate's car and all that. It wasn't questioned. People didn't think anything of it. I don't know what the teachers was thinking at the time, but there certainly wasn't any challenging going on or any professional curiosity exercised like by the teachers. We was just kind of like sort of left to it. This guy wasn't happy that I was friends with his missus, because he was 10 years older than us at the time, and word got to me that he was going to stab me after school. So when I came out of school that day, this guy pulled up in a Astra GTE. It was a red one. He went, "Listen, my mate's going to do you in. Get in the car with me. I'll take your man. Make sure you're safe. He's off his head," and all this kind of stuff. Stupidly, I got in the car with him, and he took me home, and he started picking me up in the morning for school, taking me to school, telling me, "I'll take you under my wing. I'll look after you. I'll make sure you're safe." He started taking me to school and bringing me home from school. Now, I didn't see the controlling element at the time. I wasn't that switched on, to be honest with you. And it started off small, so he's got me now. I feel safe with him. He's my friend. My dad's not around, so he's become this father figure. He's 10 years older than me. He's got a nice car. He sells drugs. People looked up to him. People thought it was funny. People thought it was hard. You know, all that kind of stuff was going on. So he said, right, he said, I'll teach you. So after like a month or something, he said, right, I'll teach you how to drive. So me thinking, oh, that's flipping great. You know, I'd love to learn how to drive. He had a nice car and all that. Started teaching me how to drive, and it started off, I say, like subtly, like playing games, messing about. Like say if you had shorts on or whatever, he'll come up behind you and pull your shorts down in front of everybody. And you know, and people would laugh and think it was funny and all that shit, but what that was, I know it was humiliating. Do you know what I mean? And what he was doing is he was wearing me down. You know, tickling, messing about, wrestling. You know, and when he was teaching me to drive, he'd put his hand on my knee and shit like that. Then he'd start grabbing me balls, you know, pretending he was messing about and that. You know, and that's how he kind of sort of eased himself in. Like, mates do this stuff. He kind of normalised what he was doing to me. You know, and it wasn't that kind of sort of serious at the time, what you call like a sort of serious sexual offence in like sort of my eyes at the time. I didn't even know what a flipping sexual offence was, to be honest with you. Then he started introducing me to drugs. So started off with Tamazepam. So he played this game with Tamazes where he put them in people's brews and spike them, and you know, and everybody think it was dead funny. You know, people just be KO'd on the couch and stuff, because what started happening is a lot of lads started going round to his house, got to know him. He's like proper wormed his way in. So we'd all be smoking weed in his house. He'd be giving us drugs. Then things like escalated from there. So he started giving me whiz. So what that'd do is I'd be up all night, you know, having to go to school the next day. I'd be knackered in school, falling asleep and that. Then he'd spike you with some Azzies. So be perfect candidate for being knocked out cold, to be honest with you. Then the drugs progressed to other things. That's when he introduced me to crack. That's when he introduced me to heroin. He used to pay for all the drugs, you know, and I became reliant upon him. Then it's like I needed him. So I'd be going out with my mates to bowlers at weekend and stuff, selling drugs for him. You know, so he proper had me in his pocket, and he was proper controlling me in a sense. So he had a barber shop as well, so he had me working at his barber shop at weekends. So he'd always constantly have me in his sight and know where I was and be able to control what I did. With the amount of money that I had and stuff, and the drugs that he was giving me, things escalated from there. So this game he used to play with spiking people, what he'd do is he'd spike you, then he'd take you upstairs and put you upstairs. Oh, he's fucked. He's out of the game. Go and fucking put him in bed. You know, and it wasn't until I had a girlfriend at the time, and we was in his house, and we was looking through some video cases for a film to watch. He was at work, I was off school, and we opened up a video case, and a load of photos fell out of this video case, and on these photos was people in various states of like sort of undress, really, and his hand was on the pictures. You could see, so he took a picture, but you could see his watch. Do you know what I mean? You could see the bed sheet, so you knew which gaff it was and not. And my missus was going through these pictures. I went, fucking hell! I said, that's someone's ass, and started laughing. And she went, what are you laughing at? She went, that's your ass. No, I don't know what my ass looks like because it's behind me. Do you know what I mean? And that's when things started to click into place. So eventually he got like stronger sleeping tablets, these little yellow tablets there was, and he'd put them in your brew, knock you out. And what was happening is, you know, I'd wake up with my arse sore, not knowing what's happened. You know, there'd be like, he had sunbeds and stuff, so what he'd do is you go on the you go on the sunbed. He'd say, go on the sunbed, you need a tan, you don't need your shorts on, you don't want a tan line and all that. Then what he'd do is, when he was on the sunbed, he'd come in the room and he'd lie down on the floor and he'd pretend he was like sorting his money out and all that. But what he'd be doing is, he'd be masturbating over you. You know, then at night time, if I was staying at his house, what he'd do is he'd come in the room. So I'd be in bed with my girlfriend, he'd come in the room, and you know, there's a few times when my girlfriend had woke up and he'd be lifting the sheets up, not looking at her, looking at me, and like masturbating at the side of the bed and stuff. And that went on for many years, to be honest with you. That went on till I was like about 21. That I managed to get away from him. I managed to escape from him. And it's like, why didn't you just leave? Do you know what I mean? It wasn't that simple, to be honest with you. It wasn't that simple. He had full control over me, conditioned me, manipulated me. I had a drug habit on heroin and crack that he was paying for. I was scared of him. I thought if I say anything about it, no one's going to believe me. So I thought the best thing I can do is just like sort of keep it to myself, really. That caused me a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and my mental health was, my mental health was on the floor, mate, to be honest with you. You know, and that, from all that stuff happening and me keeping that to myself, you know, it came out in all kind of different ways. It was another person who'd smashed my boundaries, and added to me being one of them people who'd never say no, to try and fit in, to try and be wanted, to try and be part of something, which ended up getting me in a lot of trouble, and in trouble with the police and prison and probation and all that kind of stuff. You know, this fucker ruined my life, to be honest with you. You know, it wasn't till, you know, I buried it the best I could. It wasn't till many years, till I got, many years later, where I got a drug worker who sat me down and he said, "What is up with you? Don't know what to do with you. Why can't you stop taking drugs? I've tried everything with you and nothing's worked." And he said, "Has something happened to you when you was younger?" Then started talking a little bit about his stuff and stuff what had happened to him. And that is when the light bulb came on, and I thought, he's the first person that I'd ever, other man, that I'd ever heard talk about this stuff. And what that did is, that gave me, in a sense, permission to speak. It helped me to find the words to talk about what had happened to me. And what I started doing from then is, don't get me wrong, it wasn't all plain sailing by any stretch of the imagination. It took me a long time. But what I started doing is I started to take the power back, and I started to take control back. I started to get my life back. I started to get some self-awareness. I started to smash all this bullshit that I'd thought about myself in the past, thinking it was my fault. Why did I let this happen to me? I must have asked for it. Why didn't I remove myself from the situation? All that shit, when you get stuck on that VHS tape, stuck in that place of pain, it kind of cut the ribbon. It kind of cut the ribbon, and it allowed me to create a new future for myself, to be honest with you. You know, and it was simple as someone giving me permission to speak. Now, I'm not saying you need permission to speak out about this stuff. I'm not saying that, but that's what it did for me, because I didn't think I was allowed to talk about this stuff. You know, I thought it best to keep this stuff to myself, and it's only from speaking out to another survivor, person in recovery from this stuff, did my life start to get better. I don't know any other way how to flipping solve the solution apart from speaking out, self-medicating, self-soothing, throwing yourself into this, that and the other, distracting yourself with stuff. I've tried all that stuff and it didn't work. What worked for me was getting vulnerable and saying, you know what, yeah, this shit did happen, yeah, this ain't my, I didn't say, oh, this isn't my shit to carry. I had to learn that it wasn't my shit to carry. When I seen it from outside and looked in, this is the person's shit who did this to me. This is his shit to carry. Now, I reported him to the police, yeah. For me, my experience, that didn't go too well. So I reported him to the police. The police investigated him. Other people who was around at the time, other people that he'd abused. Some of these people spoke out. Some of them was frightened to speak out about him. Some of them backed him up for whatever reason that may be. There was young lads who came forward. So this guy's been doing this. I'm 42 now. So there was some other young lads whose names I won't mention, who came forward, and one of the lads gave the exact what he did to me and how he abused me. Mine and his stuff matched up. Never spoke to him about this. He was only, like I say, I'm 42, and this kid's like, I think he's 22 now. So this guy's been doing this to young men and boys for all this time. The police looked into my school. They did the investigation, investigated him. They found drugs in his house. Took loads of flipping. Found loads of DVDs and all kinds of stuff in his house. When he was pulled into the police station and flipping questioned about it, he admitted to some sexual activity with me, but said it was consensual. Now, I don't call spiking and raping someone an act of consent, but that's what he said. Now, the police looked into, they went and spoke to my schools that I went to, and the schools came back and said I was disruptive in school, and as I was a delinquent when I was a child. All this stuff went over to the CPS, and the CPS come back with the conclusion and said because I was a delinquent when I was a child, I was not a credible witness, and threw the case out. He was up for one of the other young lads. So when he was up in court, I went to court. Walked into the courtroom. I was about 12 feet away from him. Wanted to kill him. Wanted to smash his face in. Wanted to shout out, "You fucking nonce." You know, all that stuff. But, you know, that wouldn't have helped the case that was going on for somebody else. So I just kept quiet. And it came to break time. And they let him out of the glass cage and they let him go to the toilet. So I've walked out of court and I followed him to the toilet, and I thought, right, I'm going to have him here. I'm not going to do him in or anything like that, but I thought I'm going to pull you and I'm going to look in your eyes and say, you know what you did to me, yeah? You can't look someone in the eyes and bullshit them. So as he's gone in the toilet, I walked over. Next thing you know, he shouted the usher, and the usher's flipping, come running over. Took him back into the courtroom, and when I've gone back into the courtroom, he sat a copper next to me. You know, that was a horrible feeling. You know, I didn't get to have my day in court with him, but being so close to him like that, it was a horrible feeling, mate, to be quite honest with you. It was horrible because I reverted back to that child at the time when he'd done that stuff to me. But, you know, when I look at him now, you know, I ain't a kid anymore. Do you know what I mean? I'm a grown man, yeah? He's a shadow of his former self. Do you know what I mean? He knows what he's done, yeah? So, maybe, you know, you think, how do you cope with that flipping injustice? How do you carry on? How do you not want to kill him? Don't get me wrong, there's been times I found out where he was working and stuff, and I parked up in my car, and I thought, when he comes out of that door, I'm gonna crush him against the wall with my car. But I've got kids, yeah, and what happened is something flipped in my brain, and my brain fast forwarded the tape to me doing that to him, and him and me in jail. And I thought, am I prepared to go to jail for this fucker? Do you know what I mean? Am I gonna let him ruin any more of my life and fucking totally wipe me out? And I was like, can't do this to me kids. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't do it. Then it's like the other young boy that he was up for, he got a not guilty for that as well. You know, and it's like, when something like that happens and you don't get justice, and you fucking dissed by the CPS, dissed by the police, what do you do with that shit? What do you do with that shit? What do you do with that injustice? Do you know what I mean? it's difficult, to be honest with you. It's really difficult. You know, and that was one of the most, that was one of the most biggest stumbling blocks to my recovery. Now, I don't want to use the words let it go. Oh, well, let it go, because I didn't let it go. I've not let it go, but I've just, as mad as it sounds, I've got some acceptance around it. I've got some acceptance around the criminal justice system failing me when I was a young, you know, when I was a young person, and what happened to me as a young person. I just had to accept it, because if I didn't, it would twist me up, it would make me ill, and he would win, and he would be controlling my life, and he would be living in my head rent free, and I'm not prepared to let that happen. So I've just had to kind of get on with it. And the thing is, he knows what he's done. Yeah, he knows what he's done to many boys and men. He's got to live with that shit. He's the one who's going to be looking over his shoulder, waiting for the next knock on the door from the police and a nicking. Do you know what I mean? Because other people will come forward. You know, so what do I do now with my life? Do you know what I mean? Try and help other people. Try and help other men and women who deserve to get their life back. Help people kind of see the worth. You know, that's what works for me. That's a massive part of my recovery. I've had counselling and stuff around what's happened to me, and it's like I get a lot of personal benefit, and what helps my recovery is giving back to other people by doing stuff like this, by talking about being sexually exploited, groomed, raped, abused, all that kind of stuff, but showing that, you know, there's nothing special about me. Yeah, nothing special about me. I'm just an ordinary lad who's been through what I've been through. You know, it wasn't a superpower that I developed flipping speaking out and learning to control myself and live like sort of a positive life. You know, everybody's got that inside them. Do you know what I mean? And it's a fight, mate. It is a fight. Do you know what I mean? You know, I still have my tough days. I still have my off days. I still think about the criminal justice system and the failings, but me shouting and screaming about it ain't going to change anything. Yeah, it's not going to change nothing. And what that's going to do, it's going to make me ill. Yeah, so, you know, what I try and do is kind of like sort of, you know, carry a message of hope. I've been fucked on drugs. I've been fucking full of resentment. I've been fucking wanting to fucking kill, wanting to fucking murder. Do you know what I mean? I've been depressed. I've been isolated. Do you know what I mean? And through connecting with other people like me, men and women, I've pulled myself through, but they've been able to pull me through when I've not been able to do this shit on my own. Do you know what I mean? There is hope. I promise you, there is hope. You've just got to... Nobody can do this shit for you. Do you know what I mean? You've got to do this shit yourself. You know, there's only you who can be responsible for your recovery. Do you know what I mean? And that makes it... That puts a value on it, because that's something we've not had on ourselves before. You know, we've got to learn to flip in. You know, I had to learn to value myself, which I guess a real difficult thing, because if you feel like a piece of shit, then why would you do anything for yourself? Do you know what I mean? I couldn't work that out, but other people who've been through stuff that I've been through pointed that stuff out to me. You know what I mean? And kind of like sort of showed me the path and showed me the way that we do recover and we can get better, and we can live a productive life, and you know, we can be there for other people, we can be there for our kids, we can be there for our partners. We don't have to be full-time consumed with what has happened to us. We don't have to live like that. We don't have to constantly be somebody's victim, someone's eternal fucking victim. Yeah, I'm not having that shit. I don't want that shit. Yeah, them people who abuse me are not fucking finishing the rest of my life off. Yeah, I'm fucking better than that. I've got kids who fucking need me, you know what I mean? You know, like I said at the beginning, this is a story of somebody who's fought and never give in. You can be that person too. You can do it. You can speak out. Yeah, you can speak out. You can fucking get your life back. You can do it. You can do it. Honestly, if you have made it this far, you've got that strength inside you, that strength inside to succeed, and fucking enjoy your life, mate. Enjoy your life. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that with you, for anybody out there who might be struggling to speak out and think. People like me and you don't talk about this shit. Yeah, people like me and you do talk about this shit and do get better. So peace, peace, peace.